Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. We hope that you're doing well. Welcome to the 43rd Emerging Growth Conference. I'm Anna Berry, and I'll be your host today. Please subscribe at youtube.com/emerging growth, knowing that all of our conferences are uploaded to our Emerging Growth Conference YouTube channel, so you can always check back in and watch them. So just a few notes for those attending. During each company's presentation, you can submit questions through the webcast module, and the presenters will attempt to address as many of these at the end of their presentation. Now, today we're running until about 3 p.m. Eastern time. When we switch to the next company, there's a black screen. It's just there for a second. Don't go anywhere. We're moving over to the next presenter. But if you do experience downtime for more than a minute, refresh your browser and everything should then work properly. Our platform does work best on Google Chrome. So if you're watching from an Apple device, you have to hit the play button to start the session. One last note, after today's event, you'll be redirected to the registration page for our next conference in 2 weeks. So stay on or come back to reserve your spot early. Today we have 8 companies presenting. So without further ado, let's introduce our first. We have American Metals Recovery and Recycling, Inc. It trades on the OTC Pink sheets under the symbol AMRR and is the holding company of AMR Resources, LLC, DBA Multiband Global, a leading IT and network lifecycle company offering solutions for the complete IT and network lifecycle from deployment to decommissioning. Please welcome its CEO, James Frinzi. Welcome, James. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you for the introduction. Really appreciate it.
Great. We're excited to hear about your company.
Very good. I'm very excited to tell people about my company. So our company, as you just said, is American Metals Recovery and Recycling. Our symbol is AMRR. Here's our safe harbor statement. It's pretty much going to be the same for all the presentations I think you'd hear today and ones you've heard before. So AMRR is the holding company of AMR Resources, as many of you are aware, and we do business with the name Multiband Global. American Metals Recovery and Recycling doesn't roll off the tip of your tongue, so we choose to go by the name Multiband Global, which is actually multiband itself is a telecom term, and when I acquired the multiband assets, I did that. The branding was a part of the concept behind it. But Multiband Global, we design, build, install networks. We do fiber, low voltage, Wi-Fi mesh, and 5G networks. So that's the upfront part of the life cycle of telecom. On the back end side, we do something that is considered e-waste. And so at the end of telecom life cycle or IT life cycle for that matter, equipment gets recycled or refurbished and sold into developing nations. And a lot of customers and companies actually that have a zero landfill commitment. And so the e-waste segment is actually very important for our company and the environment and quite frankly, the world. Investment highlights. And you're going to hear this a lot throughout this presentation, but Multiband Global, AMRR, we participate in the complete telecom life cycle. And we have products that support our services. And our services go around our products. So we try to keep things in our tight ecosystem. We're expanding to accommodate the changing telecom market. We're at the tail end of the LTE 4G, and even though our phones have been saying 5G for the past year or two, it's actually just getting into actual 5G right now. And so we're positioning ourselves to dominate that. We're trying to expand globally through organic opportunities and through M&A. Our revenue does have multiple streams and diversity, so that positions us that if some part of the economy starts slowing down, we have diversification in revenue to keep us stable, sound, and growing. And we have a highly experienced leadership team. As such, here's our team. I'm the president and CEO. I have about 22 years of experience in telecom on the national, global, and state level stage. And in that experience, I've spent time representing telecommunications from a regulatory standpoint, and I've advised and been a participant at a high level at multiple high-level telecom services businesses. We have Jeremy Peterkin, our CFO, and Jeremy was the controller for the state of Georgia. He's worked in the CFO's office at Disney and at Waste Management, and he was one of our really big hires to have someone with his experience in the position as CFO for us. We have Mike McClure, and Mike does our branding, marketing, messaging, and he has experience working with companies like Coke, Pepsi, Samsung, Marriott, Adidas, Audi, high-level companies with such importance on branding. And I feel that for what we're trying to do, branding is just absolutely important. We're trying to grow big and quick, and I don't think you can do that without having some strong branding and marketing behind you. And then we have Joe Page, who's our SVP of product development, and Joe has many years in the industry. He's participated in telecom in Europe and in America. He's the inventor of one of our flagship products, and he has some other products on the way that we're looking at. And Joe's an extremely innovative person. We're glad to have him on our team. For our board of directors, I'm the chairman, and Jeremy's the director. We have Senator Angela Paxton, and she's a senator from Texas and represents the Frisco, North Dallas area. And Angela served on many committees in the Texas State Senate, including Business and Commerce. So she's very experienced at regulatory issues at telecom, and also in her district, you have companies like Samsung and Nokia and T-Mobile. So Angela does have a lot of exposure in the telecom space. We have Senator Tony Munoz. He's the Senate Majority Leader in Illinois. And actually, I first met him when I was representing AT&T on some regulatory matters in Illinois. And we've just become very close. And so Tony's very experienced as a Senate Majority Leader in a major state. You do end up seeing a lot of diversity in utilities and in telecom, and Tony has a lot of experience, provides a lot of value. And we have Lily Tapia, and she comes to us from an experience with entrepreneurialism. She has experience with investments in small caps like us, and so Lily is very well connected in the world of finance and the Southeast and Latin America. And then we have Dahani Jones, and I first met Dahani. We were working together on a charity for autism. Dahani has more benefit than just his public notoriety. If you don't know, Dahani he had a TV show. He has a couple of books. He played in the NFL. He played in college sports for Michigan. But Dahani is actually extremely creative. I really value his opinion, and it's great to have Dahani on our team. For corporate timeline, I took over as CEO last October. Multiband Global Resources merged into AMRR. Then in February, we had our first large-scale acquisition where we acquired OnePath Integrated Services. Now it's called AMR Resources, doing business as Multiband Global. Then in August, we received the assignment of a patent for small cell telecom shroud technology, which is it's become our flagship product, and it's really going to help us position for the future of 5G growth. And in Q4 2022, we're looking at an official corporate name change and a ticker symbol change. Expanding market opportunity. If you are familiar with the telecom space, you ought to be aware that 5G is absolutely expanding presently. It has been, but now it's definitely ramping up. The fiber market is absolutely expanding. There's billions and billions of dollars from the federal government to bridge what they call the digital divide. And Multiband Global is positioned to participate in that fiber build out that's happening as we speak. And it will certainly be at least for the next 10 years. And then, as I was saying at the front of the presentation about the e-waste, the global market for e-waste is staggering. And this normally happens, well, there's constantly e-waste going on, but at the end of a telecom life cycle where there's a refresh, it creates a boom market for a period of time. And so that's one of the markets that we're in right now. So we do have plans to expand greater in the e-waste management portion. For strategic mission, you're going to hear some more about this, and it might even sound repetitive, but we manage the whole life cycle, where we start at the installation and building of telecom networks, again, being fiber, 5G, cellular, Wi-Fi. So we build up the networks, and at the end, oftentimes, unless it's a greenfield build, it's going to include replacing old equipment. And so we go from the start to create the network to the point where a refresh of old equipment needs to happen. And with that equipment, we recycle it or refurbish it and sell it to, often to developing countries. For instance, here your phones say, again, they say 5G or they say LTE. In a lot of parts of the world, they're actually still on 3G, and it's horrible. So they're happy to take our equipment that's end of life in America. So we're growing our customer base, and I'm very proud of our customers. One of which is Frontier. We're helping them in their red to green campaign, which is Frontier's logo is obviously red, but they're trying to be green by having zero landfill. We have Duke Energy, which is probably in a lot of your 401ks or investment portfolios, is a very well-named and well-known utility company. We've got Crown Castle, a leader in neutral host, AT&T, Google Fiber. So we have for a company our size, I think we have a very impressive list of customers. And I think it's pretty prestigious to have Georgia Tech and University of Georgia as well. We do play very well in the university space. And we have the Atlanta Braves, and that's a very strategic market for us because we're trying to expand more in the arena and stadium ecosystem because that fits our sweet spot. So right now you're looking at what would be a LTE or 4G tower. This is what you're used to looking at as you drive around and just as you exist. This has been the architecture for the past 20 years or even longer. So we're going into our product section. So this is the future, and this is what we have a patent on and has become our flagship product. As you'll see, these poles are 5G. They have 5G access points inside of them. And so our pole has a patent on allowing all four carriers to fit inside one pole. And so rather than having a large and intrusive, antenna like this that, it works, but it's not aesthetically pleasing. Here we have situations where we have communications devices inside of a pole that is aesthetically pleasing. And if I didn't tell you that there's communications devices in there, you might not even realize it. And you can see in some of these pictures, you have light posts on them. So they serve multiple purposes. But here's an overview of our products altogether. So we have the Aspire, which is the adaptive smart pole, which we were just looking at and talking about. We have the Helios system, which is an environmentally sound alternative to charging 5G or 4G communications devices. And it's just a more efficient way to distribute power to power communications. And in some cases, we can actually do solar. Not everybody may know this, but usually cellular is going to have some level of diesel power backup. And our Helios system allows for the use of substantially less diesel. And then we have MBG networks, and that's our distributed antenna system, DAS, and Wi-Fi mesh equipment. And it's targeted to developing countries in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Southeast Asia. We are looking at trying to sell these in America, maybe Q2 or 3 next year. But right now, for what we're doing, these products provide the most value selling into developing nations. So here's another slide just specifically on the Helios. And really the net of the product is that it's just a more efficient way to power 4G or 5G. And again, there are options to have solar power it, and those work for obviously more rural areas or islands and things of that nature. So this slide completely discusses the Aspire, and there are a lot of examples where you go somewhere like a town center or even a stadium, places that are an ecosystem on their own, and there just isn't really good cellular coverage. And a lot of times it's because the developer doesn't want to have a massive tower like what I was showing you before. They don't like the aesthetic of it, or there's not enough traffic for the carriers to want to spend the money to have the tower, a multi-million-dollar tower there. For our product, it's basically you're gonna have to have some kind of level of public lighting anyway, and so why not store all 4 carriers in it? And so this creates an opportunity for places that are looking for an aesthetic, places that want to have a less expensive option to have communications cover their area. The Aspire is perfect for it. And also, you may or may not know this, but the municipalities or the utility companies, they make money charging the carriers to put devices or attach devices on their equipment. And so the Aspire allows the utilities or municipalities or the owner of the pole to monetize further and have more real estate to monetize with the carriers. So why are we different than other peers? One of the main things is that, again, we do support full life cycle. We have a lot of competitors that are small, smaller, and they do one segment. We're one of the few of our size that actually go through the whole life cycle of telecom, up through the start of it all the way through the decommissioning. We have a team of industry leaders and major influencers, and with the influencers and leaders that we have the access to meet people that smaller competitors will probably never meet, would maybe meet if they were lucky over the course of several years. But our team has access to meet high-level influencers, people in our industry, people in politics that would otherwise be out of touch. And in fact, while I was in politics, many even of our bigger competitors used to hire me to make those connections for them. So here we are, we're a smaller company, and I have those connections directly. We do have a nationwide presence. However, we admittedly do have a focus on the southern United States. So we're very strong specifically in the Southeast and Southwest. However, we do have a strong presence in California as well. But we do like to practice in areas where we have a competitive advantage from resources and relationships, basically. So it's not to say that we won't do work in other places in the United States. It's just that we do specifically try to do business in places where we have advantages and resources. And then we have innovative products. And the thing with our products is that our products either feed services, or we have services where we can rope in the products. So it feeds off of each other. And we have things or products and plans and services that support the growing technologies. And again, 5G is just starting to roll out at a meaningful level. We work in the space of Wi-Fi mesh and DAS, and we're going to target some of those to developing nations, but also there's still, frankly, a lot of places in the United States where your cell phone just won't work the way you want it to. And we're still investing money in products that complement the products that we already have and complement the services. And the concept is to just try to build off of each other product to create as much revenue as possible from each customer or project. So for our growth strategy, we're in a position where we actually empower networks. So we have 5G infrastructure, we have products that power smart cities, but we also have services that connect fiber for the last mile, mid-mile, and we do in-home installations. Audio-visual is, there's obviously more and more digital signage than there has been at any point, and that's not going anywhere, and we work in security. But the takeaway for me is that the products and services that we offer, we're not competing against the industry giants like Nokia and Ericsson. Our products support Nokia and Ericsson or Qualcomm, and that they would put their radios inside of our equipment, our Aspire. Their radios and their equipment would be powered by our Helios system. So we do products and services that fit in and around the big players, but make them look good. And we're not in a position where we're having to compete against the leaders in this industry. On the back end, and we've talked about this a lot, we plan on growing in the e-waste space, which would include the recycling and refurbishment to sell used equipment in developing nations. We have intentionally looked at expanding in Eastern Europe, Africa, and Southeast Asia, which is very important. Working especially actually even in Eastern Europe, it allows us to be in a position where we provide more value. And again, in a lot of places in Eastern Europe, they're still on 3G. And so when we're going in there, we have the ability to take them farther into the future. And those markets are big enough for us, but they're small for enormous players. So it keeps us in that niche area where we're not in a position to have to compete against giants. And then we have an active acquisition strategy that will leverage what we have, but it will expand our overall ecosystem for revenue. For recent news, I'll go through this pretty quickly. We appointed the 2 board members that we discussed earlier. You'll see that there's 2 articles or 2 news releases about Eastern Europe, one of which is a presentation in Poland, and one of which was when I addressed the parliament for the Republic of Kosovo. We acquired the patent technology and the appointment of Joe Page. And we attended the Byron Nelson, which I think was a pretty big event. And at the Byron Nelson, that was another area where we did meet a lot of influencers in telecom and politics. And there's a lot of opportunities to monetize that. And then we announced the launching of the Helios energy solution. For goals, we intend on increasing revenue both organically and through acquisition. We're going to continue to create exposure at high-level events to keep us in front of influencers in politics and in telecom. We're going to expand our focus on being in the last mile, mid-mile fiber installation. In that same vein, it's going to the spending on fiber and bridging the digital divide is is not slowing down anytime soon. So this will keep us pretty busy for quite some time. And in the near term, we do intend on completing our corporate name change and ticker change and uplisting to a national exchange. This slide discusses our multiple revenue streams, and basically it boils down to, we have project-based revenue, which is you have a specific project, you get paid as it gets done. We have PO-based revenue, which is we get an order for a product, we produce it, we sell it, or we ship it, then we get paid. And then the fiber contracts are typically multi-year recurring revenue. Same with e-waste. For income statement, I'm sure a lot of you follow our filings. For the first 6 months, we did just short of 24 million in revenue. We do have an operating loss. However, there's a lot of parts to that. One of which is being a public company is quite expensive in and of itself. And additionally, the company does have acquisitions, and we've been streamlining SG&A and really just trying to decrease the loss substantially by developing efficiencies. And we're also doing a conscious effort to focus more on selling products and services that have a higher margin. Here's our balance sheet. There's not much I can really comment on this. This is our market data as of, I think this is October 10th. Yes. And so, and I'm sure that you guys are tracking that. Here are the key takeaways. And you've heard this so many times, but we're a complete network lifecycle. So, and that includes the services, products, and the end of life. We're rapidly expanding into the advanced areas of 5G, the fiber deployment, Wi-Fi mesh, DAS networks. We're expanding globally through organic growth and M&A, and we have multiple streams of revenue. And actually, as I read that, there's one thing I wanted to discover for goals that discuss real quick that I missed. It's to own and operate telecom networks at venues and developments to generate residual income. So what that means is that if you go to an arena or a stadium or something of that nature, there are opportunities for companies like Multiband Global to actually own that network and charge the major carriers to use it. And that would create a residual income for Multiband Global, which would obviously be high margin, and it's definitely I like to do things where we're making money while we're asleep. And so having residual incomes through developing and owning our own networks is certainly a key goal for me and Multiband Global. And with that, I thank you, and I can turn it back, and we can address some questions.
Great. Yeah, we do have some questions for you. Okay. So is your business more focused on urban or rural areas? Explain that, please.
Sure. That's a good question. So it depends on the product or service that we're doing, because our Aspire poles, they're more suited for an urban environment, and it wouldn't make sense to have a steel pole string fiber throughout rural areas. Now, the pole does work in suburbs or town centers, so that's one category of itself. But then for fiber, most of the money for fiber right now is being spent in rural areas, and so I'd say that for rural versus urban, it depends on the product or service that we're offering. So there's not really necessarily a focus for Multiband Global. It's more product and service focused. Okay.
It seems like everyone's been affected by supply chain issues. Have you been affected? And tell us how you're overcoming these issues.
Sure. So yes, we have been affected, and we do have some projects where we've been slowed down because of supply chain. And you're right, quite frankly, it is something that everybody's going through. And so, and just quite honestly, on some of the projects, there's really just not much we can do about that. However, our Aspire line, that product is made in America, so we do have a little bit more control over, over how that works for us. And for our fiber installation, we're not really getting impacted by that. It's more so for the low voltage construction area where we're having a negative impact because of supply chain.
Your news includes tournament sponsorship, international panel discussions, some appearances in front of a parliamentary body. So how has this served your company?
Sure. Well, so at things like the Byron Nelson, we're meeting C-level suite executives from our client base, quite frankly. And from a political standpoint, meeting, leadership of a different of foreign countries does position us in a way that is very unique, and it speeds up our ability to access customers and grow. So whereas somebody that's smaller than us that doesn't have that access, I said this earlier in the presentation, it might take them 5 years to meet somebody at a C-level executive at one of our clients, and I don't even know if they'd have credibility. Our board, and with my credentials and connections, I have that credibility almost immediately, and I have the credibility that I was able to address a parliamentary committee in a foreign country, and so that gives me the type of credibility when I'm dealing with customers or C-level suite executives that my competitors or smaller companies don't have. So the net is that it leads to business development, and it actually expedites the business development process for us because we do get to start at the top typically.
That is a great asset. So how much of your business is corporate versus government driven, James?
Well, so that's a really interesting question. As far as that, a lot of our customers do get funding from the government. And so for the digital divide stuff, our customers are seeing a flood of money from the government to fund projects for us. So indirectly, we do benefit from government spending, but we do very little work directly for the government. And so the vast majority of our business is private sector, but I would say that a substantial portion of it, and I don't have an exact figure on that, but we do benefit from government spending through our clients.
And talk about who your competitors are.
That's also an interesting question, because in our peer space, I don't really know who would be a direct competitor, because companies of our size typically don't have their own product lines and a services arm. And so on a macro scale, a company like MasTec perhaps would be a competitor, but they're so big, and we're not nearly at any level or way to compete with them. In fact, if you ask MasTec if we were a competitor, they'd probably laugh about it. In terms of companies that are our size, I really can't think of anybody that's similar in nature. What I'd like to say is that we're in a space where there's a niche market for people that need companies of our size, that large companies like MasTec or Ericsson or Nokia, it wouldn't be worth their while to go to, but it's definitely worth our while. So for instance, doing a network at a town center in a suburb in Texas, for us is a big project, and we'll monetize it, and we can sell fiber installation, DAS, our poles, network equipment, but it would be too small for a large company to go after. But it would be big enough that a company smaller than us wouldn't be able to take it on, and they wouldn't have the equipment or the connections to even get in front. And so right now, I think we kind of have a blue ocean, at least until other people, get in the space of this niche that I'm trying to to play in. So, so there's a long response to your question, but at a peer level, I don't think that we have any one-to-one peers right now.
Thank you for that. We have a few questions from Mark W. and James Koch. When do you estimate the ticker and name change will occur?
So we're already on the OTC, and I get a lot of questions. And actually, I'm very appreciative to our investors. They're so active. We hear from them a lot, and they're very passionate about the company, and that's very inspiring to me and our executive staff. However, we have a very strong compliance team. We have an investment relations firm. We have a great SEC law firm, and we do get a lot of questions that I wish I could answer, but I'm not actually allowed to respond to. So, so in that vein, I sure appreciate that question, but I'll just say, just keep track of our filings, keep watching us, and that's the best response I can give.
That's fine. Here's some more questions. Feel free to answer or say next. Can you talk about your forecasted revenues for 2023?
I cannot.
Okay.
Next.
How will an uplist work with the current share structure? And will you be doing a secondary offering on the NASDAQ to uplist? And if so, what will happen to the current shares that trade on the OTC?
Again, actually, funny enough, I was prepared for a question like this, because this is also one of those questions that I'm not allowed to answer. And I sure wish I could, but I've been advised that I cannot touch that one. So sorry. Next.
No problem. Okay. Brett asks, how does Multiband Global plan to manufacture Aspire poles and other needed 5G technology and scale up production based on growing business demands?
Okay. So, and that's a very good question as well. So right now the Aspire is being made in America. However, it is actually such a popular product that we are getting orders at a really, interesting and amazing level. And at some point, and probably not in the too distant future, we will have an issue where we're going to need to expand substantially, probably some kind of expansion on the West Coast of the United States. And so we're looking to add additional sources of product, of materials to be able to continue to produce the product. And from a finance standpoint, we are working with our investment bankers to create a structure that would allow us to finance our purchase orders and our growth. So there's many ways that we can supplement our expansion into the product market with acquiring smaller players, or actually in conjunction with finding some subcontract suppliers. And ultimately, the biggest investment would be to spend additional money to create additional facilities to meet the need of the product. So so we're using a variety of ways to get there, but of course we're thinking about this, and we think about this all the time. So don't consider that we're just waiting to see what happens, but every day we're having discussions about how we're going to finance the growth of the product and how we're going to keep it supplied.
Fantastic. Well, James, we have lots of questions for you, but we're going to send them to you so you can answer or not on your own time. But we would love for you to come back and give us some updates. This is thrilling stuff, and I can't wait for 5G to actually work.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yes, exactly, for sure. So,
all right. Thank you so much. We'll see you again in the future, and good luck.
All right, thank you. All right, bye.
Okay, everyone, stay with us. We're going to transition to our next presenter. We'll be right back.